I had booked the Airbnb for a week, thinking it would be a peaceful getaway to recharge. The listing showed a small, cozy house on the outskirts of a quiet town, hosted by a man named Elliot. The reviews were mostly positive, praising its cleanliness and remote location. I wanted solitude, and this seemed perfect. When I arrived, Elliot greeted me at the door, a tall, broad-shouldered man in his late 40s. He gave me a brief tour, pointing out the kitchen, bathroom, and the small living area. Then, he hesitated slightly before motioning toward a door at the end of the hall. He said it was locked and asked me not to try opening it. It was just a storage room, nothing interesting inside. I didn't think much of it at first. Many rentals had locked supply closets or rooms the owners kept private. I thanked him, and he handed me the keys, saying he wouldn't be around but could be reached if needed. The first night was uneventful. I made dinner, read for a bit, and fell asleep easily. But the second night, I woke to a soft noise. It took me a moment to register it. A rhythmic tapping, faint but consistent. It sounded like it was coming from the locked door. I sat up, listening. The noise continued for a few more minutes before stopping abruptly. I told myself it was probably nothing, maybe an animal outside. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The next morning, I checked the door. It looked solid, an old wooden frame with a heavy brass handle. I tried the knob out of curiosity. It didn't budge. Pressing my ear to the surface, I heard nothing. I convinced myself I had imagined the sound and went about my day exploring the town. That night, I was more on edge. As I lay in bed, my ears strained for any noise. Sure enough, around midnight, the tapping started again. This time, it was more distinct, almost deliberate. I held my breath, waiting. Then, a soft scrape, like something dragging against the wood. I got up, slowly walking toward the hall. The tapping continued, steady and unhurried. I turned on the hallway light, half expecting to see something out of place. But everything looked normal except for that door. I knocked on it hesitantly. The sound stopped immediately. A few seconds later, I heard something else. A faint shuffle, like footsteps retreating. I barely slept that night. The next morning, I decided to call Elliot. He didn't answer, so I sent a message. I asked if anyone else had a key to the house, if someone might be coming by. Hours passed with no response. That evening, I examined the door more closely. There was a small gap at the bottom, just enough to slide something under. I took my phone, turned on the flashlight, and aimed it toward the gap. For a moment, I saw nothing. Then something moved. A shadow shifted, blocking part of the light. I jerked back, nearly dropping my phone. My heart pounded as I backed away. I tried to convince myself it was a trick of the light, maybe dust particles floating in the air. But deep down, I knew I had seen movement. I packed my things that night. I no longer cared about the rental fee or losing the remaining nights. I just wanted to leave. As I threw my bag over my shoulder, I heard it again. The soft tapping, now more insistent. I hurried to the door and yanked it open. The night air was cool against my face. I rushed to my car, fumbling with the keys. As I started the engine, I glanced back at the house. The porch light flickered slightly. And then, just as I pulled away, I saw the curtain in the locked room shift. Just a fraction, but enough to make my stomach drop. Elliot finally replied the next morning. A simple message. You left early. Everything okay? I didn't bother responding. I had no desire to know what was behind that door. All I knew was that I was never staying in an Airbnb alone again. I booked the Airbnb in the heart of a bustling city, a high-rise apartment with sleek modern decor. The host, a woman named Lillian, had excellent reviews, and the listing seemed perfect for my short stay. She sent detailed check-in instructions, including a peculiar note. Please follow the house rules carefully. Do not open any windows after 10 p.m. Do not answer the door for unexpected visitors. Do not touch the bookshelf in the living room. I shrugged off the odd restrictions. Hosts had their quirks, and as long as the place was clean and safe, I didn't mind. The first evening went smoothly. I explored the city, had dinner at a nearby restaurant, and returned to the apartment, enjoying the skyline view from the balcony. As I prepared for bed, I noticed how eerily silent the apartment was, despite being in the middle of a city. No distant traffic, no murmurs of neighbors, just a stillness that made me uneasy. I locked the door, checked the windows, and turned off the lights. At around midnight, a knock at the door woke me. It was soft, hesitant. I froze, remembering Lillian's rule about unexpected visitors. Peering through the peephole, I saw nothing but the dimly lit hallway. My pulse quickened. The knock came again, slightly louder this time. I debated whether to open it, but something about the situation felt off. Instead, I backed away and climbed into bed, pulling the covers up, trying to ignore the creeping unease. The next morning, I checked my phone to find a message from Lillian. "I hope you slept well. Please remember the house rules. Let me know if anything seemed unusual." Her timing unsettled me. I responded that everything was fine and went about my day, but I couldn't shake the feeling that she knew more than she was letting on. That night, I made sure to secure every window and double-check the locks. At exactly midnight, the knock returned. This time, it was more insistent, like someone pressing their palm against the wood. I stayed still, my heart pounding. Then the doorknob rattled. I grabbed my phone, ready to call for help, but before I could dial, the sound stopped. I crept to the peephole again, but the hallway remained empty. I barely slept. The next day, I texted Lillian, asking if she had security cameras in the hallway, hoping she could check. Her reply was immediate. "There's no need to check the cameras. Just follow the rules." That evening, curiosity got the best of me. I examined the bookshelf she had warned me not to touch. It was an ordinary wooden structure lined with books of various genres. I ran my fingers along the spines until I noticed one slightly protruding. I pulled it, and the shelf clicked forward slightly, revealing a gap. My breath hitched. Behind the shelf, I could see a hidden door. My first instinct was to leave it alone, but I couldn't ignore the gnawing curiosity. With a deep breath, I pushed the shelf further and nudged the door open. Inside was a narrow, dark space. My phone flashlight revealed a short passage leading to a concealed peephole, pointing directly at my bedroom. My stomach twisted in horror. Someone had been watching me. A creak behind me sent a chill up my spine. I turned to see the apartment door, which I had locked, now slightly ajar. The hallway outside was empty, but the realization dawned on me. Whoever had been knocking wasn't waiting for me to answer. They had been inside the entire time. I didn't stay the full booking. I grabbed my belongings, ran down the stairwell, and didn't stop until I was on a train out of the city. Lillian sent me one final message as I left. "You broke the rules. I hope you understand why they were there." When I booked the Airbnb, I knew it wasn't luxurious. It was a basement unit in a suburban home, rented out by a couple named Mark and Dana. The price was reasonable, and I needed a place to stay for a week while visiting family. Upon arrival, Mark greeted me at the front door and led me down a narrow set of stairs to the basement entrance. The space was clean, sparsely furnished, and had a separate exit to the backyard. Mark handed me the keys and casually mentioned, "The main house is off limits, and please keep the backyard door locked at night." His tone was friendly, but something in his expression was difficult to read. That first night, I noticed the quiet. Too quiet. I was used to city noise, but down here, even the hum of the refrigerator seemed deafening. As I was about to sleep, I heard faint footsteps above. That was normal, I told myself. The owners lived upstairs. The next day, I returned late after visiting my family. I let myself in and bolted the door. As I settled in, I noticed something odd. The small window near the ceiling, which had been shut before, was now slightly open. I closed it, figuring I had simply forgotten. As I turned, I thought I heard movement outside the backyard door. I stood still, listening. Nothing. But I locked it anyway. That night, I woke up to the sound of something shifting near the foot of my bed. In the darkness, my breath hitched. I reached for my phone, turned on the flashlight, and scanned the room. Nothing was out of place. My bags were untouched. Maybe I had dreamt it. The next morning, I messaged Dana to ask if they had been outside the basement entrance at night. She responded quickly, "No, but Mark did mention hearing something strange, too. Probably just the wind. Let us know if it happens again." Her response didn't sit right with me. That night, I placed my suitcase in front of the basement door before going to sleep, a small barrier in case someone tried to enter. At around 2 a.m., I woke again, this time to the unmistakable sound of the doorknob turning. I sat up, barely breathing. The suitcase scraped slightly as the door nudged inward, stopped only by its weight. I grabbed my phone, my hands shaking, and texted Mark. "Someone is trying to open the basement door. Are you awake?" No reply. The doorknob rattled once more before the sound stopped entirely. I didn't sleep after that. As soon as the sun rose, I packed my things and carried my bags upstairs. I knocked on the main door of the house. Mark answered, looking confused. I told him what had happened, watching his reaction carefully. He seemed genuinely surprised. "The backyard door," he said suddenly, moving past me toward the back of the house. I followed, my pulse racing. The door, which I had locked, now stood ajar. Mark's face paled as he muttered, "That lock was brand new. I left that morning, cutting my stay short." Mark and Dana apologized profusely, even offering a refund. But I didn't care about the money. As I drove away, I received a final message from Mark. "We found footprints outside the basement door. Whoever it was, they weren't inside, but they were definitely trying to be."